Malo Lele, and welcome everyone to another episode of the Polynesian Eyes podcast. We have a live digital kava session here. Like to welcome Mr. Ate Aroa and Maka from Salt Lake. How's it going, guys?
Yeah, good, Malo.
Good. And just a little question. When do you think is it going to be the prophet telling us that the church is not needed anymore before it dissolves? And then, or how do you see that happening, that the church
That's a
has an
very good
organized?
question.
How is it going to look like? Like I'm trying to say, because you're saying if they have its purpose, and then let's just say, how is it gonna? Who's gonna be the person to say, almost like a Donald Trump, we don't need the Department of Education
Guns
anymore?
from China hit Auckland.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm just gonna say, with
Oh,
your thoughts, how is that gonna look like with the as an
I,
organized
that's a
church
good question,
structure?
Masi. And the only thing that comes to my mind right now, you won't need the church once you're talking with Heavenly Father face to face. That's the only thing I can think of, if that makes sense.
Okay.
When you leverage the church to the extent that you're talking to Heavenly Father directly, that means the church has achieved its purpose. What's the purpose of the church? To get
Draw
you
you
to
near.
talk to Heavenly Father
Yeah.
face to face,
Yeah,
right? We go back to the story of Moses. What was Moses trying to do with the house of Israel? He was trying to take them up to talk to God face to
Mount
face.
Sinai. Yeah.
Yes. That was his whole thing. He was like, hey guys, let's go. I want you guys to talk to God face to face so that you don't have to rely on me.
Hmm.
Right? But what does Israel say? Israel's like, you want us, which is kind of weird. We talked about this, I think, on some of our creation. It's kind of weird where Moses says, oh, you have to walk into the darkness to go talk to God.
Yeah.
Right? And then Israel's like, nah, we don't want to do that. You just go talk to God and then we'll believe whatever you say, which in a sense is saying, I need a prophet. I need a prophet as a mediator. Just like we needed Jesus to be the mediator with us and Heavenly Father, we added another layer. And if I just put another jab at government, if I haven't done that, we've added another layer of government. You have Jesus as the mediator, a type of government between us and Heavenly Father. Then, because of lack of faith, right, lack of obedience, we even need another layer because it was Jehovah who was there, right? In the Old Testament, we added another layer requiring a prophet. So I am by no means telling people we don't need a prophet. We don't need to listen to the prophet. I'm saying we absolutely need it because we lack the faith. We lack the revelation to do it. However, we must remember that the goal is not to be just obedient to the prophet. We follow the prophet because Jesus said follow the prophet. We follow Jesus because Heavenly Father said follow Jesus. So I don't want us to lose track of the ultimate goal and settle a little too ahead.
I see what Tua is saying. I lean more toward that as well because what you're saying. Because for example, like if we want to break it down even more down from Heavenly Father, the Savior, down to first presidency, stake presidency, to the ward, and within the ward you have auxiliaries and stuff, right? But I remember there's a teaching from President Lorenzo Snow, right? He said at one time, that and I learned this from one of his books, Presidents of the Church, right? Or no, from a Truman G. Manson lecture. That's where I heard it from. He said that Lorenzo Snow said one time, if we were, as parents, were doing what we're supposed to be doing, there will be no need for auxiliaries. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. So that's kind of going into what you're saying, basically, in some kind of indirect, almost kind of similar way, saying that eventually, once we get to Heavenly Father, there's, you know what I mean? I kind of see what you're saying, though, and I kind of agree with that because that's the whole goal. You know what I mean? Like what you were saying.
Okay.
It's the means to the end kind of thing.
Exactly. I mean, it's the same reason why we have organized government today. Why do we have organized government? Because we know some of us or all of us are going to break the laws. We're going to behave inappropriately. So we have a government to provide some stability because of our fallen nature. If we all weren't fallen, we wouldn't need the government of the United States of America. We would all just behave in a way that we would regulate ourselves. But because we all recognize, if Tua gets a little stressed, gets annoyed, he might kick something, break someone else's property. Well, we need a way to resolve that. Okay, let's have a government. Same thing with the church, in my opinion. Because we know Tua is going to sin, we need to provide a system and a structure by which Tua can mend his relationship or his behavior with God. And that's to help Tua until the day he gets into God, talks to God face to face, and fixes a lot of his challenges. But that's kind of like the purpose of the church, in my opinion. And one day, I think the church is a tool to get us there. Now, where we see a lot of people making mistakes is they graduate themselves a little too early and think, I don't need the church anymore. I already know everything. Well, that's a problem. And that's what the Book of Mormon has showed too. There were a lot of people in the Book of Mormon who said, we don't need to follow the law of Moses anymore. We're going to get rid of that. That was wrong. Who was the one who told them the law of Moses is over? When Jesus showed up. When Jesus showed up, he said, okay, law of Moses is done. Here's the new law. That's what I would imagine one day Heavenly Father will say, you know what? You followed the Savior. Well, you followed the church. You got to the Savior and you continue to follow the Savior. Now you're in my presence. You're good to go now, in my opinion.
All right. I'm good now. Understood.
Okay. I want to discuss something a little bit more, dig into something that Maka mentioned, because I think it's very intriguing, right? Why is it that in the LDS world, only Tongans have stakes? Maybe, I think there's one, maybe Spanish stake
in California.
In California, I think. But why is it that the Tongans are almost the only one? Where they got stakes in New Zealand. I don't know if they got stakes in Australia or not.
No stakes here in New Zealand, Tua. It's only that
Only
California.
wards?
Only
California,
wards.
Utah, right?
Yeah, California, Utah.
Why Maka? I had higher expectations of these guys.
Man, without in got much again.
Oh, so all the times, Masi, that you mentioned talking to the stake president, shit. Anyways, let's just say in the US. How about Australia? There's fewer Tongans in Australia. Yeah. So let's just say even that outside of Tonga, or the country of the Tongan, I don't know any other ethnic group or even within an ethnic group that has as many stakes outside of their country of origin than Tongans. Why is that?
What you think, Maka?
It's funny because we're the smallest, but talking to some of the OGs, it's like it's that's an easy answer because we pay our tithing. That's like
which is very true. That's the practical answer.
But I think not to say that anyone else has less faith, because in order to pay tithing, you have to have faith. Like you don't just pay it, because to me it does no good to pay it if you don't have the faith. Like it's almost kind of. I mean, it's still good to pay it regardless, but paying it because you know what I mean, because of your faith versus. Yeah, I'm just paying this because I'm supposed to, but really I could use that. You know what I mean? There's
checking the box.
A difference, yeah. But I mean, whether you do it this way or that way, you know what I mean? Ultimately, it comes down to again, I'm not trying to say any other ethnicity or whatever has less faith than we do, but I mean, ultimately that's tied into your faith. Like, and to borrow the words of your dad, there was an interview he did one time. He said, we went from the like we've been a faithful people from the beginning. We just switched it over here and we just stayed like not just faithful, but like fervently faithful, like with the passion, like we, no question kind of thing.
No, 100%.
Almost no,
Masi,
knowing, not even faith, but yeah, coming down to faith basically is what.
100%. What are your thoughts, Masi?
Ooh, I think Maka brings a good point with the Lotumua and the Lotumui. Having that same continuation, kind of the old and the new religion. I'm trying to think. There has to be, to me, there has to be something special to allow this to happen. Because, like I said, within the Polynesian community, we come from the smallest. Like
Yeah.
population wise. But why are we the ones we're growing in number?
I'm gonna add
You
to
know?
that before I threw up. Sorry.
Yeah, growing in number with like a Tongan states in multiple states in the U.S. Like I said, just with the Polynesian community, it's 0.2 in the
It
U.S.
doesn't make
consensus.
sense. It
It
doesn't
doesn't
make
make
any
like
sense.
Yeah.
and to be honest, I feel like there's gonna be something about Maka touched on it with our faith, and there's gonna be something that's gonna. I feel like maybe there's gonna be some challenging times for the church going ahead, and when you're gonna talk about defenders of the church, maybe there's gonna be people within that community that will step up and defend the church. And I don't know how that's gonna look like. I don't know. I'm just saying there's something it's preparing us something in the future. I don't know what it is, or maybe it's the way we fellowship and how we perceive. We kind of touched on Maka and I, Tua, you also touched on it with how we perceive of families. Maybe that's an example that maybe other people can follow. There's something. I feel like there's something in the works because there's something that's gonna happen, or we need to set an example. There's gonna be something. I just don't know what it is. But when you put our history and just the numbers, it don't make sense why we should be growing in the state wise. We're the smallest in all our Polynesian neighbors, population wise, and just within the U.S. consensus. But why are we still growing? There's a reason to be it. It could be for, like I said, something with the maybe the leaders, church leadership see that we can be an example of, or something that's going to happen in the church that maybe, because I do find, like what Maka said, a lot of the like people who grew up in the church are very loyal to the church in any aspect to it, and they will stick with it. And maybe I don't know, it could be something like that the church may need us to be relied upon in the challenging
Okay.
times. But something like that. I don't know what it is, but we'll find
Go,
out.
Yeah.
okay.
That's
Go
just
ahead,
me.
Maka, you said you had something to add.
I don't know if I'm reading through his mind right now, but I think some of it also has to do with, and to kind of with like your brother Lee's sentiments. Like I remember y'all had an interview one time. I know he didn't like using the term empire because it had a negative connotation to it, but because we are, let's just use that term in the good sense, you know what I mean? Because we are descendants of an empire. We were empire builders. We were like we've been building empires. Like if we want to go secular, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, it's just, I think it has something to do with that. We're tied into that because if you see versus, let's just say, how you said, again, I'm not trying to put anyone down, but versus all the other Polynesian islands. But if you go back into history, like especially what you guys are trying to push, you know what I mean, as far as where our history comes from, like where was the capital at? It was in Tonga, right?
Exactly.
And then if you want to go into the church, it's kind of like we're just doing basically we've been doing this already kind of thing. That's kind of like how I'm trying to tie it into.
100%.
I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
I am
with the faith. You know
yes,
what I mean?
exactly. And this I'm 100%. That's where my mind goes, right, Maka and Masi,
Man.
because
Great minds think alike. No,
Turi loa tawa mesiasi.
You know. All right, disclaimer: these are for entertainment purposes only.
Yeah, this is not official doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ. Because Wada Bears is gonna write President Nelson and say, "Hey, go and check on this podcast, President Nelson."
Check on the president of the podcast.
Oh, see, Maka, this is the only case where Masi is going to be the one that will report on us. Masi and Wada Bears. Set us up. Well,
You got proof here. We're just playing now. Go ahead.
yes. Well, see, and that's the thing. I 100% like when you look at it, you remove all context, right? You're just looking at the numbers. It makes no sense, right? So that's how I kind of look at it. Is you start with, let's take out all the context and just like the smallest group, right? The ones who have not only the smallest group, but as a group has been in the US probably the shortest
time, yeah.
right? Because at least with our brothers and sisters from Samoa, they had American Samoa as a stepping stone, right?
Yes.
The access to come to America, they were decades ahead of us.
Head start,
right? And so so you look at that, you look at us and coming in, and then you look at why is it the LDS church as a percentage, Tonga is the highest percentage of a country, members of the church. And then you go and then you're like, well, let's look at the history of these people. Like what kind of people are, and then you look at like what you were saying, Maka, they were shutting down wards, right? They were shutting down like language speaking wards. And then once it hit the Tongan group, it stopped. Like it got to the point where all of a sudden the brethren said, oh, shut down. But then when it got to the Tongans, it stopped. Now there's some stories that Groberg had an impact on that, right? Like there were some stories of that, like who knows if it's true or not, that Groberg's like, you can't remove the Tongan culture from a Tongan and they won't be Tongans anymore, right? And they bring something to the church, whatever. There's some story to that. But I look back and I say, this is tied to our thinking of government. What was the Tongan government from anciently? It was the Tu'itonga from the old religion. And what was the Tu'itonga? The Tu'itonga was a representative of Hikuleo. He was basically a prophet. He was basically a representation of Hikuleo. And that's why we did the Polo Polo. It was basically a tithing, right? And then not only is there that tithing aspect of it, this government or this culture permeated into everything that our ancestors did. The kava ceremony. There was a purpose of the kava ceremony. Everybody had a spot to sit in. There was structure, there was order, there was the kaveingas, right? So it wasn't just a polo polo every once in a while. There was, hey, we need to do something for the chief in our village, for the noble in our district, for the Tu'itonga. Well, that is the bishop. That's your elders quorum president needs to do something for the bishop. So these are things that our ancestors have been doing for thousands and thousands of years, right? And nowhere more concentrated than in Tonga, right? And I'm a big believer, and this is actually proven science, what you call Jordan Peterson was the one who kind of revealed this. When you make certain decisions, it actually changes your DNA, right? Like he describes it as there are parts of you that you unlock by the choices that you make, right? Like when you fua kaveinga for the first time and it breaks your back, believe it or not, that actually builds up your ability to fua more kaveinga, right? And it's the fight or flight. Instead of running away from it, I'm going to stay. And our ancestors have done that for thousands and thousands of years, right? There have been families where the Tu'itonga said, you're going to go and stay on these group of islands for 3 to 5 generations. And they go and stay on those islands. No different than going on a mission. No different than being sent on the Lord's errand. What I'm trying to say is it is literally in our DNA. With, the brethren used to call it back in the day. You don't hear it as much anymore. But in the early parts of the church, they called it the believing blood. Right? There are just certain people that just have what they call the believing blood. What does that was supposed to mean? That when they hear the gospel, it just rings a lot easier for them than others. And why is that the case? It's not because Masi or Maka did anything great. It is over long generations of time, there has been consistent choices that have led to consistent behaviors that ring true. This is why I believe God specifically told Abraham, I'm going to kind of separate you from everyone. Right? And he told him he didn't want them intermarrying. Like God, in the beginning, God was really strict with the Jews. Like if they intermarried with other people, he cut them off. Right? And I believe he was developing this quote unquote believing blood over time, meaning once he had to develop it, like generations after generations of making certain choices and certain behaviors, then all of a sudden, once you develop that blood can now go everywhere, because everybody has now the blood of Israel. Whether you believe it or not, I'm a believer that everybody has that, because the 12 tribes were scattered everywhere. So everyone has that. But I also believe in certain areas it was a little more concentrated and for specific reasons. But that's why I kind of going along with what you're saying, Maka, is I think there's so many cultural, social, and behavioral reasons why Tongans are doing what they're doing. And it's not because the Tongans of today are in isolation and some unique thing. It's like, no, dude, they've been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. It's almost like we can't help ourselves but do it. But yeah, I mean, to me, whatever reason, I agree with Masi. I think there's a reason and a purpose for it, and we'll see what God has in store. But that's my 2 cents right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Any thoughts? Anything else to add to that, or we want to jump to the next thing?
No, I'm good.
Not to go back to previous conversation, but just a thing I forgot because it just popped into my head. But how you're mentioning needing a prophet or the government or the church or whatever after, you know what I mean? Once we get whether we need it or not. I just remembered what's his name? What's that guy's name? Abraham Gileadi or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
When he mentioned there's something that stuck out to in one of his interviews where he said, you know, he said, that's why I never like when people say follow the prophet. He's like, I don't follow the prophet. I follow Christ, you know?
Yeah.
The prophet ultimately is who,
yes,
he said he himself is telling us not to follow himself, but follow the Savior. You know what I mean? So that's why I thought that was just something I thought of when I forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about the whole point of it is to follow the Savior, Heavenly Father, you know?
No, 100%. And I have 2 comments on that, right? There are, like, for example, the word of wisdom, right? That's an interesting topic. One day maybe we'll get into it. But I follow the word of wisdom because, you know, some people say, oh, we follow the word of wisdom because it has all these health benefits. Me personally, I was like, those are debatable, right? Some of those are debatable. And I even say there's even debate on how the word of wisdom should be applied. And some people will criticize me and say, so what are you saying, Tua? You say we should be going out there and drinking beer and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. All I'm saying is I follow the word of wisdom for a very different reason than you do. You know, what do you mean by that is, you always tell me you follow the word of wisdom because it makes you healthy. And I said, maybe it does. I don't disagree with that. But I follow the word of wisdom despite my personal perspective on it, because God said, follow the prophet. That's why I follow the word of wisdom. Right. And that's why I do it. Even though it's just like when you follow your parents, you can disagree with your parents and you could be right. But that's not what God asked you in the 10 Commandments. He didn't say, honor your parents when they're right, but don't honor them when you're right. He said, no. You honor your parents across the board. Right, wrong, or indifferent, you honor your parents. So why does that matter to me? Well, if the prophet came out tomorrow and said, it's okay to have a beer, I guarantee you some people are like, oh my gosh, the church is fake and it's not true. And, you know, beer is unhealthy for you. I'm like, no, My job is to follow the prophet. Right? And I think there's certain values to that, and we don't have to get into the doctrinal side of it tonight. But for me, that's a very important way of how I follow and obey things is, the prophet said so, like Gileadi says. And why do I follow the prophet? Not because he is some amazing blah blah blah, but because Jesus said follow the prophet. And then why do I follow Jesus? Because I believe Heavenly Father said follow Jesus. So there is a line of authority that I just say that's the line, right? Just like I honor my parents. I try my best. I guarantee I fail all the time, but I try to honor my parents, not because my parents are some untouchable thing, but it's God said I need to honor my parents. Coming back to that guy, that Abraham Gileadi guy, one thing that he said, very interesting. He was asked by the guy on, was it on Quick Media?
Yeah.
Madsen? Quick Media, yeah. So they were talking about Isaiah, right? The book of Isaiah, because that's Abraham Gileadi's like expertise, right? Because he has his own translation. Here's a fascinating question that this guy asked Abraham Gileadi, because in the Book of Mormon, it says that the descendants of Lehi will return to, quote unquote, the promised land and inherit the promised land. And they asked Abraham Gileadi, who do you think is the best group to represent the descendants of Lehi returning to the promised land? He said Polynesians.
Yeah, I think I remember that part.
Yeah, that's who his guess is of the leading candidate. Now, does that mean anything? Well, no, it's not a guarantee, but kind of interesting.
Be a good guess, though.
Yeah, and then so that's kind of interesting, right? I mean, yeah. But yeah, those were a couple things right there. Any thoughts on that?
Nah.
Okay. So I think we'll skip the PBD podcast, and we'll kind of come back to Tonga. I know we can say we're going to talk about some of the role of government in Tonga. So there's this one video that I wanted to share, and it's let me see here. It has some feedback back and forth between the, what is it, Radio Nuku'alofa 88.6.
Oh, okay. And what's that guy? Lala and what's the other guy?
So it's just Manlala. It's just him. So this lady, I think, is from Australia, and she's at that summit or whatever, and she's going to talk about her frustrations of trying to invest back in Tonga. Right. And Manlala kind of gives some English commentary and summary on it.
Okay.
Let me make sure I have the volume on.
Hello, Sioana. Continue.
Whakaau ke te ongo e kua whiunga ngā we. Ia tai maari e he ofa e o tua o mau e ki kuku. E taimi pe mau e kuku I kai toi ki te ha whanua I te pea tonga.
I absolutely love what she just said here. What she said is she's been working in Australia for 26 years. And in that 26 years, she's been saving and saving. And what she also said, which I absolutely love, is when she has her saving or she's looking at her savings, she's not thinking of investing back in Australia. No. She's only thinking of investing back into her homeland, back in the kingdom of Tonga.
Kureanga. Pare mia, kau taki o tong. Te wahe pe ai mea mau fou mai ai. Te tai me mau whakautua pe me I muri, ko tai me koko mau whakapapau iai te mau lere mai ki Tonga ni. Mau tā telefoni holo. Whakamore. E ulea mou whakahoha pe I here bolo. O e kakai, o I kai ke maongo onga e tuunga whakaakoia. Kai ke ai ha me ai ko to lava hu ke ha website ke lau. Ko mau me ape ko fai ko kumi ngai fika telefoni. Mau ta mai ke office ko ta mai te mau al ke office ko. Mau ta mai ke office ko mau al ke office ko.
To the government, PM, cabinet ministers, the leaders of our country. This is what they have to go through from overseas. When they call into the Kingdom of Tonga, they call into one department. They say, no, you need to call another department. They say, no, you need to call another
Ko
department.
mau ngau e Australia ku no fo he pure anga. Te mo ngai panke mau me au ku i ko mau supa. Mau sio pe ko fe unga e panga ko mau totongi mai fonua kite a Tonga. Mau to o to e mau supa. Whakatau at kaulere au ki Tonga. Oku tari mai e kakai hok tua. Oku nau nofo mo nau ngahi supa lalahi au piti. Kak nau fuia he o mi ki Tonga. Si ia I lo hufanga he whakatapu.
In Australia, there's something called a super, where they put in their money into the super, put in their money to the banks in Australia.
Masi, do you know what the super is? Is they have that in New Zealand? Is that like a retirement fund or
That's like your
something?
social security
Oh,
stuff.
so that's the equivalent of Social Security.
Social security and like your what's it six was it what's the other retirement that you put into your bank account, then your employer puts that percentage in.
Pension.
401k.
401k. Yes, and that's their form of 401k, Social Security. Yeah.
Okay.
People like her have taken out their super. They've sold their houses. They want to come back to Tonga. But the only reason why they don't is because it is very difficult to find out any information about how to invest in Tonga.
Koe ku kore ke he pure anga. Mau hanga mo au tuku tafa aki ange. Ha call center ke mau tāmai ki ai pe whakatau kei ki mau tolu. O e tāmai pe tāmai mau tā ke whika koe pe ave ki mau tolu ki he. Koe uhi ngai ku mahina e tolu I Tonga ni kou lere me he office ke office. Whakahe mata ke wako ke ilo. Ke whai ngofua.
She urges the government to please, is there a chance of setting up a call center that we can call that call center and give us all the information instead of calling one number, then they tell you to call another department's number and another department's number. She mentioned she's been here for 3 months. She's been going from one department to another department to another department to another department in that 3 months. And she's going to do it because she wants to gather all the information to be able to help her fellow Australians that's behind her that wants to do the same, that wants to take out their super, that wants to sell their homes, that wants to invest in the Kingdom of Tonga, to help them to invest in Tonga.
E ai ha whahinga toka ngai kina ma wahe mua ki mau tolu. Talu e ku whakautua he. Tala noa lalahi pe pureanga tonga aia. Kei kai mana tua ki mau tolu koe mau mea pena e whai koe whaloho mau ni maa mei muri. Po mau whalawang e ko ki mau tolu koe whaloho pe. Kua iai e ngahi aikon lalahia I muri e tau whanau. Ka pange ko ato kua nau fui a he o miki Tonga ni. Pure anga. Ka iai mua ha whahinga whaunga. Ke si toka ngai kina ki mau tolu ku mau foki mei muri. Mau omi mo ta ilo. Mau omi pe mo beak mau ko mau omi o foki ki api. Ta koe amanaki lere e mau omi o foki mai ki api ni. Koe mau omi o kutari lele yange ki mau tolu.
She also calls out to the government of Tonga. She sat in the back and listened to the government talk about big things in here in the Kingdom of Tonga, forgetting the little things that needs to be done, forgetting the Tongans overseas. Remember the little things to help us be able to retire and invest back in the Kingdom of Tonga.
Koe kulere mai ke whakahoha atu pe. O ku iai si o mau ni ihi. Ku mau tuku pā ke mau whai ngā ue mā Tonga pe mau whoki ki api. Nā awahea atu mo. Ha te pui maka I he whanua. Ke tokanga kina ki mau tolu, ko mau tuku pa, ki mau foki ki Tonga. Leve vai malanga kau tatawa.
And to end it is from me. This is a true fact from Sioana about working with the Kingdom of Tonga, working with the government of Tonga. It is very, very hard. You know, you go from one department to another department. She's talking about her experience wanting to invest from overseas here in the Kingdom of Tonga, wanting to retire from overseas here in the Kingdom of Tonga. Her money will be able to go into our community. But let's talk about the locals. How hard it is for us locals here in the Kingdom of Tonga to be able to get something done with the department of any department of government. It's always the same thing. One department to another department to another department, and then go around again and queue on another department to another department to another department. Why is it so hard for us, the government, to be able to make it easy for the people of Tonga, our Tongan people from overseas, to be able to do anything here in the Kingdom of Tonga, especially if you have to go through a government department? Ko ia I tonga kotoa, whanongo ki he kore koe ni, whanongo ki he tangi koe ni, me he kainga koe me muri. Tau whenga ha mea ke whai ngō fua ke nau tolu, ke nau mauha information, ke nau lava o retire mai ki Tonga, ke nau lava o mai nau seniti ki Tonga. Heilo, na tokone seniti koe ni, ke ekonomi koe atau whanua. O whātu.
Whina matua au whakahoha a ko ping.
That's
Man. So my bad, I'll go ahead and go first, but my bad to cut you, Bussy. But so this brings to my mind, there's actually he's not a Tongan per se, but he's married to a Tongan too. She's actually my auntie, actually, but where he's staying at is in Tonga, in that part of my auntie's family. Like he's with those guys over there in Nuku Nuku. You know what I mean? Mm. But this guy is a Palangi dude. His name is Terry Wallace. That's the name
I've seen him on YouTube.
You seen him on YouTube?
Yeah,
I seen some of his stuff.
So does that remind you of what he's talking about, or have you watched?
Yeah, because he would spend all that time standing in line, and he keeps delaying his return.
Yeah,
because things are taking forever.
Yeah, 3 or 4 months he was like there for a while.
He had to extend his visa because he couldn't get anything done. But what she's talking about, that's the first thing I thought of was Terry, because again, because he's not Tongan, he had to get approval to get land that leased from
Bacano's property.
But and was able to get that approved. So he got that done, and then you've seen a mixture of it's not what you know, it's who you know, but you still had to go through from one department, like, but he was getting like what that lady's talking about, like the runaround, you know, like he circled around and came back to the same department. And then they finally told him one thing, like, oh, yeah, you're going to get this email, whatever. We've been working on it. Come to find out, the stuff he's been working on for the last month and a half, 2 months, nothing's been done. They have to start over, like, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So that's my thought on that. That's what came to mind. And I think it's, and I know he's not the only one. He's just being a little more like providing like some visual to it, because he's documenting it every day. If you watch his video, he's like, all right, I'm going into town, whatever. But he's documenting every step to kind of help everybody, which I think is good, because he's helping people out to kind of like, you know what I'm saying? See what they're going to have to go through, be prepared. But I see what the lady is saying, and you know, I feel bad for her, because I know, again, she's speaking for everybody who's trying to do the same thing. And I don't know what they have to do, if they have to like revamp the infrastructure or whatever, you know what I mean? Because I don't know if you ever had to do that in Tonga, like, because couple times I'm planning on going out to Tonga more in Bavau later this year, and I'm like, because you know how it is, it's a typical, not to speak badly, but you know more not that and then something will get done or whatever, but it's kind of like, you know, it needs to be a little more organized. So I kind of like, in a sense, feel her pain, and I know what she's talking about, because it's not as organized as it should be, and I know, like, with the money that we can provide from here, whoever's trying to put money back into Tonga, it's not gonna make Tonga like a multi-billion-dollar island, but it's something, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like they're not prioritizing that, because maybe they have other stuff on their mind, bigger money or whatever, but it's just, that's more money still, regardless, you know what I mean? That could come back into the island from your own people, you know what I mean? So
100%.
Yeah, that's my little 2 cents.
What's your
Oh,
thoughts,
nice,
Masi?
Maka. Definitely agree with Maka. Maka, this is how kind of far back Tonga has been. This current prime minister has just said that when you have your lunch break, that you still have to open your your ministry. Because in Tonga was you had your lunch break between 12 to 1. You
Yeah.
couldn't do anything.
Wow.
That's yeah. They'll put a sign lunch break. Come back on this time. So
Oh
now
wow.
the government has just set a mandate. Even if you have lunch break, you got to have somebody still manage the
Still
office.
working.
So
Yeah.
still working. So I think this kind of thing is gonna, and this is probably the thing that needs to happen. That there needs to be probably serious conversation that's gonna hurt some people's feelings. That things need to improve greatly in order to really get optimized and just get our economy just kind of going. Because I feel like the government, many past governments, and it's good. There's been a lot of focus on getting aid, financial aid from other countries, from other things,
Yeah.
and people have been neglected. So this is kind of the sacrificial lamb that's kind of been happening. They do all these government official meetings and stuff to other countries and get those big aids from other countries because they're huge aids. But then there's been a lack of improving the service for Tongans in Tonga and Tongans overseas, and this is kind of right. It's gotten this bad and it hasn't gotten better. But to me, what that lady was saying is I think a call center is not enough to it. There's going to be some because right, you can get the call center and call, and then you can transfer them to that
Yeah.
ministry, but it doesn't.
Same thing's gonna happen.
Same thing's going to
Yeah.
happen. They're going to say, "Oh, then call back another time," or just say, "We'll transfer you to another ministry because they're in charge of that." Then you're still going to do that, but it's going to be over the telephone. So I think the call center is a good first point, but you need. I think Danny talked about it. I don't know if you're familiar with Pitapua Maka. He's kind of like a very well-known political guy that kind of people get a lot of view. That he's kind of real respected. That he gives his opinion and
Okay.
stuff. He had an interview with our older brother. There needs to be there's a lot of degrees in Tonga, but they don't have it's the necessary degree of organized behavioral organization management. That's what
Mm,
Tonga needs. We need that kind of people in Tonga because it's a behavioral thing that needs to drive that change within the ministry to provide and see because right now it's not even the minimum. It's really really bad at just meeting the basic service. So
mm,
to me, there has to be a behavioral organizational change that
yeah.
somebody tough that needs to do it. And when you got to do those organizational change, behavior organizational change, you're gonna step on some toes on some people that's probably it's gonna you're gonna probably take some
Yeah.
heat from it, kind of like a Elon Musk what he's kind of doing. It's like we have to do these audits, but we're gonna say the names and what's happening. People are burning his Tesla stations, and it's kind of hurting him financially. But we need somebody kind of like that to Tonga, and Tonga needs to advocate that they want somebody like that. And the thing is, there hasn't been that political will so far because Tonga has been kind of been in this funky situation of be more democratic and then people who are constitutionalists and the monarchy. There's been that divide for a while, and that's another thing that's been affecting Tonga too. Is they've been focusing that and big government aids and neglecting the people and improving their services. So to me, there needs maybe a couple people, a good group of people that the government needs to. I feel like they need to go in a recruiting agency because there's people within the Tongan diaspora or even people in Tonga that you got to have the political will to let them do their job and defend them. Because the thing is, just like anything you do in government politics, you don't attract the best people because you're going to get slandered or be bullied if you don't have a strong political will, people to back you up. Because what has Trump been doing? Trump's been defending Elon Musk doing his job because it's not
Mhm.
easy. So that's the thing Tonga needs, in my opinion, to really improve. Like what you said, Maka and like Terry kind of went through, to because people shouldn't be staying 3 months just to get documents to do a business. They haven't started actually
Yeah.
doing work, and they've already spent a lot of because it's not cheap having money there when your family's still back in overseas and kind of trying to
Yeah.
because that costs time and money. But that's just me. I don't know.
Yeah.
What's your
No,
thoughts
no,
on
I
that?
agree. I think this is the way I'm going to kind of tie it to some of our earlier discussions, right? What is the role of government? The role of government is to not get in the way. Take care of the bare minimum, right? Take care of the bare minimum and don't get in the way. And right now, what we're all describing is the government's in the way. Money wants to come to Tonga, government's in the way. Whether it's they're not paying attention to it, right? Or they don't have the right people, but the reality is the government is in the way. And I've been a believer of this, and I know, from what that lady is saying is, I think Tonga needs to forget about this big money stuff. They need to get away from it, in my opinion, right? This is the same the concept as we look at the church. We look at the church and what Tongans have been able to do in the church outside of Tonga, right? This tells me that, like this lady, the level of dedication and sacrifice that Tongans are willing to do for Tonga, right? Yeah. And I'll share this to kind of be an example. We'll jump on this real quick. And this is why the Tongan government and their strategy needs to change. They need to forget about this big money overseas. You know who their big money is? Tongans. They need to stop worrying about that, in my opinion. If they wanted a radical change, the only thing they should worry about these big money overseas is for infrastructure. If they want to redo the roads real quick, they want to build bridges, they want to build like little wharfs and stuff, hospitals and stuff, big money. You can go for that. Outside of that, this investment in financial and business commerce, they shouldn't even be looking at any money besides Tongans. And I'll kind of explain why this logic is. There is the church, there is that relationship, but the only thing that keeps the Tongan economy afloat are foreign Tongans.
Sending the money back.
Sending the money back.
Well, this is the thing. Maybe they just want to keep they don't want Tongan overseas to come back to Tonga. They just want them to keep. Now we pay Muri or shit or my bang or retire. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
No, it could be that could that's what I'm saying. But that's government getting in the way. Like you could be right, Masi, because what does a foreign Tongan bring that threatens? It is know-how and it is influence.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? A donor, an unknown donor who has no interest in Tonga directly has no threat.
Yeah.
It actually empowers the political arm in Tonga.
The status quo. Yeah.
Yeah. Right? But Tongans from overseas coming with know-how is a threat to the current structure of the government.
Yeah.
Right? Which is, once again, government getting in the way, the government not doing its role. Right? But you look at here, you look at some of this stuff, right? Economically, remittances are a dominant source of foreign exchange, often outstripping exports and foreign aid. Okay? In 2021, personal remittances were estimated at a US 220 million, equivalent to roughly 44% of Tonga's GDP. Okay?
Wow.
Forget about the big money. Your big money are the Tongans overseas.
Yeah.
That lady who was just speaking right there, that is your big money. They need to forget about, honestly, if I was in charge of Tonga, I would say forget about going after these quote unquote big donors or these big investment firms, right? Because the reality is this: Tonga is not a big enough market. You're talking to the wrong people. You could have the best idea in the world, but Tonga does not have millions of people. So you need to go to talk to the people who are invested in Tonga. These people who are working overseas, they're sending $220 million a year. You scroll down here to the bottom. In short, Remittances keeps Tonga afloat, driving consumption and stability, but they are a double-edged sword, fueling dependency while under-delivering on structural growth. The economy leans hard on this diaspora lifeline for better or for worse. So, once again, infrastructure, big infrastructure projects, okay. Go to the UN, go to the World Bank. You can get those, and you'll get those far and in between. But in regards to building economic opportunity and investment for everyday commerce and economic growth, it's a no-brainer. Forget about the foreign aid. And so what should they do, in my opinion? They need to set up a one-stop shop. They need to have a handful of people that their job, it's like, you know, when you go to college or any business and they're trying to say, here's a one-stop shop and here's a person that's going to guide you through the process. They need to assign people like that. And the reason why is maybe the first 15 people, it'll be hard. But after this individual has helped 10 or 15 people go through the process, they know. And for the investor, they're dealing with one person, right? And they need to facilitate that, because I'll tell you right now, they're preventing hundreds of millions of dollars coming into Tonga because of this. And here they are standing in line, competing with other people to get certain grants and stuff, when there's literally hundreds of millions of dollars dying to come in. But why is it not coming in? They're focusing on the wrong thing. And then the reality is, you remove these people like her, like Terry and your aunt, the Tongan economy dies.
Yeah.
It dies. These are the people. And that's what I'm saying. Like, understanding how things really are will really change your focus. Forget about these bigger things. Dude, I would be of this. You know, when you do all this advertising for tourism, I would say don't make non-Tongans your target. You know who your primary target should be? Tongans. Because you have your Tongans come back to Tonga, meeting their family. Guess what that does for remittances? Goes up.
Yeah. It just reaffirms their commitment.
Exactly. So all this, see, this is the kind of stuff of just like practical. If the Tongan government would just look at what keeps the economy alive, you take care of the hand that feeds you, and the hand that feeds you is not a billionaire in Dubai. It's not the World Bank. It's Tongans, right? That's where you go. That's where you focus. You know, instead of sending a delegation to go to China for tourism, send them to freaking LA. Send them to San Francisco. Send them to the churches.
Yeah.
You know, set up programs to bring the youth. That's what was one of the cool things about Siwaki Levi and some of these people who are sending these groups of youth to Tonga. Dude, you're reinforcing those relationships, because once a Tongan is in Tonga for like the second or third generation, that remittance level goes down. So you need to bring them back, reestablish it, and then that brings them more interest in investing in Tonga. Like that should be the focus. And unfortunately, the government doesn't have the vision. They don't have the organization. They don't have, they're doing things the way they're doing it because that's what people have done for forever, right? Go back to how Tonga stayed independent. Tonga remained independent because what did they say? We're going to bet on the Tongan people. We're not going to give other people land. We're going to have the Tongans keep the land. We're going to invest in our people. Tupou the First didn't say, I'm going to go bring in, this or that. He said, you know what? I'm going to empower the Tongan people. I'm going to give them freedom. I'm going to give them land. I'm going to have them work and develop the land. He focused on the people, the Tongan people. How do I protect them? How do I give them opportunity? Right? some of the
Tongans. Yep.
exactly some of the critics of what happened in Hawaii, you know what a lot of the upper class in Hawaii did? They kept going and living in Europe and traveling. And they neglected. And what happened? They came back after traveling Europe. Hawaii was lost.
Yeah.
Right. And so that to me is what really the Tongan government needs to focus on. I guarantee you, how much was it to build a wharf in Afa? 5-10 million?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? Dude,
Mm-hmm.
I'm guaranteeing you could figure out if 220 million a year comes from remittances, you can figure out some kind of way to incentivize people in Tonga from regions to say, hey, if you guys pull together 5 million, we'll build a wharf. We'll find a way to charge people to use it. You get back your investment on a payment. I don't know. Who knows? There's a lot of ways you can be creative to build that, right? There's a lot of things that you can do. And I think the Tongan leadership needs to figure that out. They need to figure that out on how do we provide economic opportunity, right? And there's going to be another example, another easy one. Here's another easy one. Have Polynesians overseas have some type of investment system where they inject cash, whether it's to the Tonga Development Bank or some kind of bank, to give out loans to businesses, right? And then they get some kind of return on that. I mean, there's a million ways you could make this work. But what are they doing? They're focusing on the wrong thing. They're focusing on what the Philippines does. Well, the Philippines has tens of millions of people, a huge market that's probably worth billions of dollars. Tonga can't compete with that. Any kind of thoughts on that? And then there's another video I wanted to kind of show.
Yeah. So, and this comes to the question. I've been kind of going back and forth between this question here. Maybe you and Maka can give me your thoughts. And I'm probably leaning towards that maybe we should allow it, especially if you have a Tongan passport and you have Tongan land. Those are the two criteria I'd say that Tongans from overseas should be allowed to vote wherever their land is allocated to. That's my opinion. I've talked to my older brother about that. He said, no, you have to be in Tonga. But I was like, no, I mean, the thing is, the traveling on the Tongan overseas, they got to go to, I think, Sydney, San Francisco, and here in Auckland. Those are the big three places that majority of Tongans live at, and there's an embassy at. Tonga should be, and that's the thing too, it's just a vision, should be able people either a day before the elections to vote wherever their land is located at, and whoever's running to represent, that Tongans overseas should be able to have a say on who should represent their country. Because like I said, this is a rowing boat. The right side are your families that live in Tonga and holding the front on that end, and then the left side is you funneling that financial buying power wherever you're at. Because like that lady said, she worked in Australia for 26 years, but her commitment has always her mind has always been in Tonga. And the ones who care about Tonga will have the Tongan passport, will have the deed to their land or the title to their land in Tonga, and they're going to keep it valid within their family. You got to have those two criteria to be able to vote in Tonga and do it overseas. And that's your job if you're living like, say, Maka's in Utah, that's your job to go there before the election day in Tonga to get to San Francisco, cast your vote, who you're going to vote for that represents the best interest for you and your family in Tonga. That's what I'm thinking. That I think that's something that's a visionary part that the government of Tonga can do. But I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts? I talked to my older brother. He's more of the old school. No, you have to be in Tonga to vote and be in the country. No need to do it overseas. But I don't know what your guys' thoughts are.
I'll take a next swing at it, and then Maka can add in there. When I look at what drives the economy, I say, why not? If the Tongan economy only exists because of foreign Tongans, why would you not try to cater to that? Right? Why would you not want to cater to that? That doesn't make any sense to me. If your number one customer the Kingdom of Tonga's number one customer are Tongans overseas, I would say it would be in the best interest of the Kingdom of Tonga to figure out a way for that. Because you remove that, like we just looked at, 44% of the GDP is from outside. And then what's foreign aid going to be? Another 30%. So, okay. And I think that's something really important. And look at it. The people in Tonga are suffering because the current government is not focused on the right customer. If they were focusing on the Tongans overseas, where, you know what, if they could vote, trust me, I promise you they'll start paying attention. They would figure out ways to make investing in Tonga more efficient.
Possible. Yeah.
Right.
And this is not only this current government. This is multiple governments since that's been neglecting the Tongans overseas
interests.
and interest.
Yeah. So I mean, I would 100% be open to that and consider that. Is what I will say is this: what's currently happening is not working.
Yeah.
You know, so something's got to change. What are your thoughts, Maka?
No, yeah. So I agree with you exactly. Like I say go. They should go ahead and allow it. But to add to that also is especially like what Masi was saying, especially if you have land in that certain part or whatever, they should allow you, because that not only affects them, because say for example your land is not being developed, then I got to come over there and the right person wasn't voted on. I got to go through all these loopholes and all these run around again to help develop the land and bring money back into like that whole thing. The easy way is, like you said, they should allow it. You know what I mean? Have it as an option at least, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's constitutional or is that, I don't know how that, for that
possible
to be changed. Is it a law or something? Or?
The law right now is you have to be in Tonga, but that's something, like you said, if the government had if they were just put some effort and time to think of where the money is coming from, just make it easier for Tongans to vote. I feel like they can do it. They can do it. Samoa's already talking about having them just to go to their U.S. Or their Samoa consulate, that to make sure the Samoans overseas are the ones who are keep paying, that are part of the thing. You don't have to go to the country. And I feel like, to me, the ones who really care, and to me, like, it has to be those two things: Tongan passport holder, and you gotta, wherever your land is situated at, those would be the criteria that you should be able to have to vote, because that is your land,
Yeah.
So
if they were to set something up like that, they can check it. You know what I mean? If you go up there and they allow it, but I mean, my question was, do you know if that's like, I don't know how as far as the Tongan government goes, is that like a bill that has to be passed for them to allow
they
that?
just create a law. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
You just have to create a law.
And if it is spelled out in the Constitution specifically, which I don't know, but that's why you have amendments, right? You create an amendment and you allow that to happen. But it to me, they have to figure something out. They have to, and honestly, they owe it to the Tongans overseas. We're not trying to be like over rude to anybody back in Tonga. Hey, that's great, but it doesn't make sense for that in America. Because why? Because the wealth that's generated within America is within America, right? So that doesn't make sense. In Tonga, the wealth that's generated in Tonga is from outside of Tonga. So they do owe that to the Tongans outside of Tonga. And it's in their best interest in Tonga, because that is the revenue driver. Like I said, I mean, 220 million a year.
Yeah.
There's 100,000 Tongans. I mean,
I wonder if those numbers, if they're even aware of that or not. Or I'm not trying to doubt them.
They do. They even try to tax it and do all kinds of stuff to it, right? But I think it's, people will resist it because of politics. I think there are people in Tonga who, if they were to look at it, would fear it, because, oh my goodness, like, they're giving a lot of power and influence outside of Tonga, and maybe they don't like that, right? People, you got to remember, there are people who like things to be bad or not improve, at the very least, not improve, right? The status quo makes the people in power feel okay with the way things are. But I think that's a great idea, man. I think that's something that should be pushed, in my opinion, because the numbers almost demand that.
Yeah.
The numbers almost demand that. Like, it is undeniable that the biggest stakeholders in the world I come from construction, the stakeholders are the Tongans outside of Tonga. They are major stakeholders because they are driving the Tongan economy. They're like, nobody disputes that. Nobody disputes that it is Tongans outside of Tonga who drives the Tongan economy. Why would you not want to include them?
Well,
in
and
my
that's
opinion.
and that's the thing. I'm just like, it could be a purposely thing because, like, there's a lot of smart people, people with masters and doctorate degrees, and they get elected in parliament. But for some reason, for the since 2010, it's like things have been just not really any improvement. But like, that's what I'm trying to say is, like, I don't know why they haven't tried to cater more services to the people, and they just focus. It's always the focus on these foreign aids and having these big meetings, and the service is just for the Tongan people, and the Tongan people overseas is just so lacking. But I'm just saying, man, it could be a intent thing to do, just to say, you know what, just let the Tongans overseas just do it the way it is now, and let me run the way the government's been running in Tonga.
Yeah.
Because I get my, let's just say when there's less smart people in the room, it's easy to be the person everyone comes to tell what to do. But let's just say you get some couple smart people, you have to battle your ideas to see which one rises to the top. That's a lot of work. Because I'm just saying, why would you want smart Tongans who've done well overseas to come, who they say they want to come back, and then they don't like how things are running? Then when they've lived there in Tonga for a little bit, they might run against you. I don't know. I'm just thinking this is such a common sense that, like, people are just leaving the way it is because they like what their little area that they're doing in Tonga. But I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. I'm just thinking because this, to me, it's common sense. But
and the reason why I asked, thanks, Masi. The reason why I asked that earlier, if you think they're aware of those numbers, like, who in their right mind will see those numbers and not focus on that? You know what I mean? So it has to be. I'm not trying to imply it's corruption or anything. I don't know if whoever's in power is getting a little bit of something on, here and there to kind of prevent that, or, like you said, mention those who are bringing money, if they're looked at as like a threat, us over here overseas or whatever. You know what I mean? It's not like they're giving away. It's not like the law has changed where you're not losing land or nothing. But I mean, if you were to just simply look at those numbers that you just pulled up, like, who in their right mind would be like not focused on that? You know what I mean? That's why I was questioning, like, do they even know that or not, or are they even aware to see, like what was it, 220? What you said,
220 million a year.
You're like who would see those numbers in the government or whatever? Because Tonga a small government, who would see that and be like, let's just not focus on this right now. Let's just put this to the side. You know what I mean? Like, like you said, it doesn't make sense. If they knew that and are aware, why would they not focus?
So if you were to let's just some theoreticals, right? So it's 220 million a year in remittances, and let's say what would be kind of a number of how many Tongans retire every year? 5 to 10,000 around the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe
5 to 12, 5 to 10,000 rough. And let's say they've been working for 26 years like that young lady, right? That's a few $100,000 times 5,000. Let's go with the easy number. That's additional millions to tens of millions every year of investment consistently, right? Consistently. Forget about these foreign donors, man. I mean, I'm not saying, when I say I'm exaggerating a little to prove a point, meaning if you got zero foreign aid, but you got 80% of that $10 to $30 million a year from retirees, and that money not only just comes in once, but it keeps compounding and coming every year, you could do a lot. Right? You could do a lot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that, and then if you did that and you got foreign aid, well, even better.
Yeah.
Right? But to me, I'm just blown away by like that resource that the Kingdom of Tonga has. And I don't feel that they are leveraging that resource, but it's the number one resource that they have. But all they think about is foreign aid and, World Bank and UN funds and all that stuff that they have to compete with, that they have to like stand in line. And I'm like, dude, you got tens of millions of dollars sitting right there every year.
And here's like one example. Like, for example, like Wavao had a boy that just came back. He was like, man, I ran into so many Palangi people walking around over there. They don't have nowhere to stay. There's not enough. Like, that's just one example. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, people sending money over, but if they were to build their businesses, like, you already got your little tourism right there. That's extra money for the economy right there. You know what I mean? If you had made stuff easier for them to build something, you know what I mean? Little stuff to look at too, you know?
No, 100%, and here's another thing, because not only do they focus on the foreign aid, right? So let's say they're focusing on the foreign aid and they're successful with the foreign aid.
Probably still not worth it.
And that's the thing, is the way they apply the foreign aid and where they put the foreign aid ain't that great either. Right? Let's try that was the same. That's a little bit better. It's a little bit bigger, but
who's this person?
So her name is Tuna. She's CEO of Tofa Ramsey. It's a local shipping company. Okay. I think she went to school at Tonga High School. Yeah, she is a Tonga High School grad. Danny's age group. She's on the board of directors for a bunch of different public enterprises and stuff. So she's a well-respected businesswoman. Okay. But let's listen to her. So this is at the same summit thing.
No, I can't hear.
Got the volume?
Oh, shit. Technical. Kofe tama IT. Ton kita tama IT.
Kona ya mohe.
Kona fumalo he kava. Kamata ke fo tama IT.
Pongi ni kasi omia ma ki mautolo me motu. Ka taki pe ai ngahi tātaimi, ko le ake ai pe ke sea, lahi ngahi taimi na ton ke tā aniasi. Ki tuku mai pe ho mau whainga maali e ka taki o e whakasisi. For our non-Tongan speakers, I'd like to thank you still for coming along, considering most of the discussions are in Tongan. And I will try to summarize the long-winded Tongan explanations that I will proceed to do right after this. Because when we speak in our language, it needs to be long for the heart to feel it. But to summarize it, it'll be done a bit shorter and to the point. Hangepe ko lave ane nai, whamole mole, pia whatulo watu, ka mau fia ki kau whakataha I he whainga maari e koe ni, pa mau whakamalo watu, ki he polo kalama koe ni ko o mai, ma ki mau tolu. Lahi ai ngahi mea ke he kehe ia ke whai ai tala noa, ka o ku mau to'o ai whainga maari e koe ni I hono o mai ke private sector ka taki, ke o ati aho mau leo. Ne tautou o mia neafi I he tautokon pale nia ai uhinga o e whakataha koe ni ke mau mea mai me wafu me he uhala a mo e fu, ki he whare whakaofo ofa koe ni me ngoe kakala o wha o ne lua. Aia koe o mai ke tala atu aho.
So I'm just going to kind of summarize it as we go, just for some of our listeners. She's a private sector business, right? So she's not in the government, and her biggest concern is she wants to have a voice for the private sector, right? So we're already getting a little bit of why the foreign aid matters, because who gets the foreign aid directly? The government, right? The government is the first receiver of foreign aid. So Does government necessarily like focusing on getting money directly to the private sector? No, because they get cut out. They aren't the ones in power and in decision making.
Mau loto, mo e mau fie mau. A kimu a ke whakahoko ia koutu ko ki pui tu asi isi ipe. Ki he ngāue o ku mau whakahoko he nai mahino pe me ngai tālanga ane a fi o ku ke isi ipe nai ai ilo ki he mau mea o ku o malawa i he kuonga ko eni, ai ko kuonga eni hono whā ai ngāue ai tō whā RMC shipping ko au me he tangata hono tolu. Ko ai ai tō tangata hono whā ko mau ngāue mai. Me tāne walunga futupu ai ngāue me tahi ka mata mai a me he otumotu haapai me lulunga. Ka koe ke pehe mau haapai pe. Tā kai whala mo lahi family me vavao, iai e ko ngai niua, pak mau kore ato mau whainga maari e.
80 years, family business, domestic shipping. Yeah, I didn't even know they existed when I was in Tonga, right?
No idea.
So,
You never heard of that company?
What is that?
You never heard of that company?
No. But I mean, I wasn't paying attention, right? When you're young and a kid, you know.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Masi.
So they take the shipping containers that came from overseas and then they distribute them within Tonga. Is that their kind of business?
Whether it's foreign goods or even domestically moving stuff around, because you remember, like a lot, probably
logistics.
Yes, a lot of the big ships can't go to every little island, right? So maybe they take stuff and deliver it to the smaller locations, something of that sort. But basically, there's a need there that they have been meeting for 80 years, right?
Yeah.
And what, fourth or fifth generation? She's the third generation now leading, and maybe the fourth generation is working in the company as well.
Ko e infrastructure development mo technology. Me ai au mau inga au pito ki ha pisinisi pe i he sektoa tau taha pe au whai e mau whainga. Ane awhina tau whanongo ai tō pehe light at the end of the tunnel. Ko hono whakatonga tōtonu i he mao e ki whinimutua koe ni, ko ha pehe kua malama mai nai, ha maama i he loto ana. Ko e mauongo i currently, te mau futama kia he ana.
Dang.
So apparently, this straight up, right? The government is
there.
saying there's light at the end of the tunnel, right? There's light at the end of the tunnel. And she's like, I know you guys said that, but for us, we're going to die in the tunnel, right? The one I like to use is, I see light at the end of the tunnel. The only problem is, I don't know if that's sunlight or if it's a train coming back the other way, right? And that's what she's saying is like, dude, you keep saying there's light at the end of the tunnel, but we feel like we're dying here, right? It's like someone, when you're dying of thirst and someone says, I'm going to give you $1 million. And you're like, dude, your $1 million is worthless to me. I need water. I don't care about your $1 million is not going to keep me alive. I need the water. And that's kind of like what I'm kind of feeling from her is she's like, you guys talk about these things, but it's not helping us. It's whatever you guys are doing is not helping us. Any kind of thoughts or feedback on that? Or do we want to just jump back into it? Let me know.
No, I'm good with jumping back into it.
Okay.
Lahi ai ngahi tu'utu'uni o ku hoko ia koe whakamamahi lahi. Pea ka ataki pe koe ai ne ke tau ke. Koe kore atu eni, mo whaka amua mea o tau share Facebook a ke mo say yes mai a ki he ngahi kore. Whatata aki pe eni. Tau toksioni pe i he foi presentation wha ofa. Ko tuku mai me he minister o mau whakamalu atu ai malini. O kukau i he division ai Ministry of Infrastructure. Kau pe a tahi pe he ke teknolosia as a side note. It seems like an afterthought. Koe paanga lahi pe i he tau ngahi teu i Tongani. Koe me aia i he e mau ki i whakasiosio ania mo whawhanonga ngahi tala noa. O ku tau pe he ku tatawai NGO, government, donors. Me he e mau sio me tahi. O se area i ngahi project i whaka ofa laui miriona tau tānoa ki ai. Toki o angele vai ki tahi, hange ia koe na e ofo ia e whema ue waka. Koe toki whakakau atu en ki
See, this is the kind of like disconnect. This is why government is so bad at things, right? What she's saying is you go and have this big project. Let's say you're going to get all these goods, right? You're going to get all this stuff, all this money, all this good, this huge project in Vava'u or Ha'apai, right? And you get all the material, and then you're shocked that you need a boat to get it to Ha'apai or Vava'u. And you're like, okay, buddy, you live in an island, a group of 167 islands. Why are you shocked that you need a boat to get it from point A to point B? This is not a continent.
Yeah.
And that's what she's saying. Basically, what she's saying is there's a disconnect from the proposal, the idea from the government, and reality and how to execute it. Just like we were talking about earlier, they're all focused on the big money, the donors, and all this stuff. When they're like, dude, the Tongans overseas are your biggest source. That's what's keeping you alive today, and you're neglecting them.
I was just chuckling too because she said say yes to the infrastructure and everything. You know the big thing's been going on in Tonga with the say yes to Loa.
Yes, say yes, Ewa, yeah.
Say yes to Ewa. And I just had a chuckle because that seems to be the trending happening in Tonga.
It's just say yes.
Say yes.
Yeah. Vamos say yes, Mike.
Yeah.
See, Tanga, if I'm going to say yes to foreign Tongan, overseas Tongans voting, let's tell swingmen, siwa, I have a rap.
Yeah.
Yes, say yes. Vote ka muri. Eh?
Lucky I got that TV.
Mautolu he talanoa. O angele vaia pehe kulimitek si esirinia ke pehe mai fe mauia ke maangi. E koe whanongo me kakai oku mamafa ai folau ki tahi. Ko ki mautolu pe ke toe mai I he private sector, true private sector I he shipping. Malo whatoka ngā kai hoko pe. Ko I he private shipping. Ko mate atu ho maukau ngā whanonga. He ko lahi ai ngahi mea ko ne haisia.
I think that what Uliti Wata wasn't he was the one that wasn't he like a domestic logistics shipping?
I have no idea.
I want to say Uliti Wata used to be a domestic shipping company that I may remember.
And Mate Negautaha, so his company is dead, and she's the only one left for domestic.
She's the only private sector solution for logistics right now.
Okay.
Ko ki mautolu pe no I he panke whakakomesiale he na e tala mai he panke ho tau whonua Tonga Development Bank fulahe mau fie mau. Pea sai pe ka pau na pe he pe ka kua hu mai a ngahi kautaha kehe ko community o nau tai maarie I he tokoni interest rate peseti pe nau tolu e ono ngahi paanga tatau pe na mau kore mau peseti mau tolu hongo full point nima ki he panke whakomesiale. Liliu take into money, that's about ono ngeau tupu, ono kilu tupu. Oku mautotongi, interest, ikai fair competition.
That's crazy.
Tautu mai katoa hen, koe inland revenue, koe ports, koe marine, pe mention no pehe kakai maange, ai tuku pe I he marini. Mau kore ate mautolu, pe marini, pe poate taulanga, taha pe. He koe invoice you ha'uua.
So,
see? Oh, go ahead,
what is she saying? No, I was going to say, so she's saying that there's been other businesses coming in and they're getting a better interest rate compared to what she's been giving with her company. And that's not a fair playing field.
I think what she's saying is if it comes from like, and I could be misunderstanding, if it comes from like a government-based entity, it's considered for the community or by the community, so they get a lower interest rate.
Oh, gotcha.
But because she's private sector,
she gets a higher interest rate.
She got a higher interest rate. She doesn't get a discount because she's not, quote unquote, a community.
Almost doubles. The interest rate almost doubles.
Yeah. And so if I understand correctly, or she's saying other industries, because there's multiple of them, they can come together and get a loan, but she can't because she's the only one left.
Yeah.
So she can't joint venture on a loan to get a lower interest rate. Something, whatever, basically, because combination of not being able to have other competitors to work together, or going against like the marine, like she keeps mentioning the marine sector, like these other groups that they keep saying like, oh, it's cheaper for them, but she's like, but you're the only option, you're the government. Right? Yeah. And here I am trying to survive as a private sector at a higher interest rate, and I've been doing this for 80 years, and you guys can blame us for being expensive, but I'm at a disadvantage.
Ki he kautaha e taha. Ki he whatongia o maupehe ofa mai a pule anga. Whakahoko e whatongia he mea koe ke malawa he se ki toa tautaha. Ofa mai kautonas. Sio ko mo paanga o kui kai omi waka i pe. Waka e ua, toi asia ke pe i wafo. He uke kua o si. Ta tau moe waka e taha kua o mai koe ave ki otu motu. O si pe ia ki lau mahina sii e mautana ki sirini ho mauiwi o kumi e waka ke whakaakua e uta ki motu. I kai omi e tokoni ko ia ke tokoni mai ka mautolu. Koe mātu a pe mautolu. Pe a moe fine mātu a Tonga. Kei ngā ue. O ku whaka mamahi ai sio ki he omi o whakawhekiki i he mea o ku whai he tonga, lolo tonga i he sektoa maui ai. Ka taki pe, i kai kia.
So once again, right? Private sector is doing the job. Instead of going and finding money to build a bridge that the private sector is not going to build, right? And do jobs that the private sector cannot do, what do? They go and buy boats to compete with the private sector, when she just spent all of their investment to buy a new boat to take care of that task. The government comes in with a boat to do that. Basically, it's there to kill her. That's what it's doing, right? You're coming there to do a job that is already being done by the private sector, by the federal government, and it's going to kill her because she's got to pay back a high interest rate loan, right? And it's a small market, and the federal government's going to come in and they won't do a good job, but they're subsidized by the government, no incentive to be efficient, and it could kill her. And she has to compete with foreign aid investment. Once again, federal government not good at identifying where they need to focus. What she's saying is, dude, go build a bridge. Go do something that the private sector can't do.
Yeah, those big infrastructure to allow the people and commerce to go and do their job. Well, that's the thing. Maybe no, because I'm just thinking maybe we're getting too many people who go to school and they in school they teach you how government should be the answer for everything, and then when they get there in government, all they do is just make it bigger but not make it more efficient. I don't know. That's starting because
100%.
You can get smart people come in, but if there's smart people who believe that government needs to be just bigger and bigger and bigger but not efficient, man, right? It's hard to be efficient when you have a big government. So I don't know. I'm just trying to think out loud. Yeah.
Any thoughts there, Maka?
No, I'm just like,
it's kind of crazy.
I'm feeling bad for that lady, man.
No, I mean it is sad because these people are fighting for their lives, and instead of, once again, what's the role of government? Is the role of government to compete with private sector? No, the role of government is provide infrastructure that the private sector cannot do independently, so that private sector can serve the people. Once again, you see what happens here. Maybe this is what happens. This is what it sounds like to me. I am going to go and find money, right, to go and do something that the private sector says is you can make money off of, right? So they go, oh, that's a safe bet. There's money to be made there. Let's go and flood the market. This is how businesses work in Tonga. And Masi could probably testify this, in you too, Maka. see it. It's the way human beings are. Once somebody starts making money in one little way, guess what everybody else in our community does? They all go do that same thing, not realizing you're going to go flood the market and you're going to kill it for everyone.
Yeah.
Right? And that's like what the government in Tonga is doing. Instead of saying, hey, thank you to Tofa Ramsey, it's difficult. They don't understand how difficult it is to run a business, right? They don't understand that. When you're the federal government, you're an educated person who never started something from the ground up. You don't understand how difficult it is. They just see Tofa Ramsey's doing it and they're not happy with the price because it's expensive, not understanding that Tofa Ramsey has to go with a higher interest rate and they have to compete. They raise their own capital. They go and say, the government's going to do that cheaper. And how we're going to do it? Get foreign aid. We're going to go get foreign aid. That's why, how many times have we seen this? New equipment gets bought by the government, brought to Tonga, runs for like maybe 2-3 years, falls apart, can't maintain, shut it down. But then in the meantime, what did they do? They killed the private sector in that area.
Yeah.
You know, where what they should be doing is what we discussed earlier, in my opinion. Free up that foreign private money to come, and maybe they will invest in her business. Maybe they'll come in and say, hey, Tofa Ramsey, I have 400K Australian dollars. I want to invest in you, and either as a loan, I can give it to you at 6%, or I get equity and we work. Maybe they come with some expertise as well. That would significantly help the domestic shipping in that area. Right? Or even if they opened up another business, but what Tofa Ramsey could do with them, if it's because she's the only one, she can't partner up with other people and make it a community loan. At least if there's another private sector competition, they can at least try and get the lower interest rate on the loans. I don't know.
Oh no, because that's another problem. That maybe that's why the government, like what you said, Dua, the government should get involved in other sector of business deals, when government should just make the field even for everybody and just let the business
Get out of the way,
compete, and you just focus on your own government ministry services. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
They're focusing on doing
the wrong thing.
Different sectors instead of improving your
Hey.
own service.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Yeah, no, it doesn't make any. And now it makes sense. I think it was last year or the year before. What did the king say to the government?
Yeah, get out of the private sector.
Get out of the private sector. This may be the kind of stuff the king is talking about.
Yep.
Right? It's like you're focusing on the wrong stuff. Rather than going and getting boats to kill the last remaining private sector option, maybe you need to go focus on how to make the administration easier so that foreign Tongans can invest in Tonga. Maybe you need to go focus on that. Right? Maybe you need to go focus on, Tongans have been complaining about the roads since I was in Tonga. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe you need to go focus on that rather than focusing on, we're going to go buy some boats and do a domestic logistic company. Get out of that. Go and focus on the stuff that you should be. What's the role of government? Right? What's the role of government? What should it be doing? I think we know where this CEO's thoughts are, right? She's like, get the heck out of my way.
Pena me loto si I ke haole hanga tonu ka ko ha mo lotu ai mau kau ngā we pe mo e ku toke tā aku he whakalele waka mo ngawe aki a wafo whaki pe e au mo e ku kau ngā we
Malo tuna ko
pule anga whamole mori te whenga ke whakama opo hi whakata ki malo fine kau pen fine he mea pe ta whata no ki ai hange te o vale pe ko tuko e fulai aluminium me lai foi lai me fa fo fa he funga wafu ko pe he ko ho protect fine ai wafu me mau e mau la mi a mau to he ke holo me ko ya ka taki kai si ato ai le
Prime example, right?
Mm.
The government who doesn't know how the work is executed puts in infrastructure that damages the materials and the property of the people using the infrastructure. Like she said, they came in and put some kind of metal thing structure on the wharf, in theory, to protect the wharf. That's what the government leadership did. What did it do? Damage the lines of the shipping boats.
Mm.
Because with that metal, it probably cut it, sharp edges or whatever, cut the line. See, once again, government, how igitamaya me potungawe wafu. Oh, I'm gonna make a mark for myself. I'm gonna put some aluminum to protect the wharf. Hirigoya, it hurts the industry. It costs more money.
e vai maulea me pure anga ke pure anga ke pure anga ki au I he whahoko waka. Politics is a problem.
Yep.
Discontinuity o ngawe. Fetongi tongi e kautaki. Ka koe foi misini ngau e koe pure anga. Ha upe kautaki. Hange he mawongo imwe mausio. Liriu. Whaka off.
See, government is like a piece of machinery. It's a tool. It's a purpose. It's not the end. It's a means. It's and it's not doing its job. It's not doing its job. Lack of continuity, right? Kind of like what Masi was mentioning earlier between people who are with the king and with the democracy and with all this, and that. No continuity leads to inefficiency.
For ofai palani. Ka oku empower na ye CEO mo kau ngawe oku nau iai ke whakahoko mai o nau whatongiaka mautolo. Oku mausio nai ko ki nau tolo oku taki he mau ngai whaha I. Oku nau mau ai technical mo business acumen ke nau sio mai ki he mau whenga pea mo luo mo ana ku hange oku mau nofo pe ai kai ke mau te ake hake. O se tai honga furu me he pite mau toi he ni mau tolu pe kai. Infrastructure development ko hana family ni o fai. Lele ta ulahi ki eua, si o he whai ngataa, ai whetuku holo e pensini mo mea ko ia, maulanga ai e pausa, koe whafola ai ne whalaka tau tālanga. Teki ai ke pehe ke pemata. Good job for helping us.
Did you guys notice that Fofola Falaka tau tālanga? Right? So this is what I want to come back to. I think this is important for us to mention. She's mentioning something our ancestors have done for thousands of years. Okay? You build the mound because we were mound builders, right? You build the mound, you put the structure on top, the house or the fare or whatever. You lay the mat, you bring the kava, and then you have the discussion. That is how our ancestors executed business, executed government, executed religion for thousands and thousands of years. And she's still referencing that in saying, now that we're done talking politics, we're going back to what we did for thousands of years. This is not politics. We're laying out the fala, the mat, and we're going to talk about reality. We're going to talk about reality. We're not going to do the politics. We're not going to do the Western politics. We're going to talk about the Polynesian, the Tongan reality on how we should be behaving. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that she brought up.
Yeah. Well, and I was just thinking, Alpha, because this is a family business, and for Alpha, just hearing from her, she doesn't know if it's gonna survive any further than 10 years because of how strained, how everything is strained on the business on her end. So if Alpha, because 3 generations, by your family.
8 years right there, hard work.
Yeah, and to think, and she's like, the government who should be serving me, I feel, is the one that's trying to kill me. Right? That's what's crazy.
And then that guy earlier, I don't know, trying to cut her off or whatever, like jokingly, but
go because the time, right? There's a time limit, but she's like, hey, today we're following the fala and we're going all out today. Because like she said, hey, I don't know if I'm gonna be here. So she, you know what? You have to kind of see the end of the road is a real possibility to get to this point where she's like, well,
Yeah.
I might as well say my piece now because I may not be around.
Yeah.
You know, she owes it to herself. She owes it to her ancestors. She owes it to her descendants. And she owes it to the people of Tonga,
Mhm.
right? To tell them,
Yep.
guys, I see a problem. And if we don't fix it, yeah, it's not going to be good for me. But if it's not good for me, it's not going to be good for the people as well.
Not
Mhm.
good for the country. Yeah.
Yeah.
Minista lan mata. Tani aku. He whanongo ho lea na whakahoko. Kui pausa pe tapa, kui pausa i babau. Te iki ai mau he whine motu ani. Hatohi ke tala mai o mau non-comply. O ku lele ta e whakalao pe. Ai ngahi pausa ke i kai invest in infrastructure. Kai ke tau whanongo tau tau ria ki ai. Koe technology kataki pe kau ki hoko atu. He koe talu e mau kore toko ni moe i kai. O kui ai e kau taha Tonga. It's called Defiant. A young Tongan entrepreneur, young people, and they're amazing me. I he nau develop e ek. Ko mau tolu pe ni. Ala pe ki ho mau kato koe ni ko kamata ke kai ke to i ai. Ke ai he koe uhinga ko ave atu e kau kapiteni, kau ensinia ia, ave a otori. Ave a otori, ka mau whenga rewa teknolosia ke tokoni mai ke mau ngawe.
One thing. So basically, what she's saying is there are some local app developers that she's investing in directly. Right.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. These Tongans overseas with their retirement funds would be doing this type of investment. Right. And because there's no capital within Tonga to invest in these, that's why we're losing the good labor to go and pick fruits overseas. Because there's no capital in Tonga to take advantage of the skill sets she's mentioning. Guys who are learning how to be maritime captains, you know, people who have software development skills. Why are they going to go pick the fruit? Because there's no capital in Tonga to invest in them to make some commerce out of the skills they have. They have to forget those skills that they learned and go do physical labor because that makes more money than staying in Tonga, despite the knowledge that they have.
What did she say about our Fafafonga from our district that because
Yeah.
he told her that told the Tonga that only one gas station in Mava'u was compliant, but it was the other gas stations in Tonga are non-compliant because of neglect of infrastructure by the government. And
Yeah, she's saying two things. Number one, never communicated to them that they were non-compliant. Right? And then it sounds like she's saying, so number one, you never told us we're not compliant. Right? So that's a problem. If you don't communicate to me that I'm doing something wrong, how am I supposed to fix it? And we all know how Tonga is. Nobody pays attention. Only until there's an issue, then all of a sudden people pay attention. Then the second part, like you're saying, is maybe they're non-compliant because there's not the correct infrastructure in place. How can you blame me, the private sector, for not being compliant for something that the federal government should be providing? Right? So you're setting them up for failure is basically what she's saying. So number one, you don't communicate. Number two, you aren't even providing the proper tools because they're too busy buying boats to compete with the private sector in an area that they don't need to get involved in. And then, like you said, then all of a sudden they think they're on their high horse. Oh, I did my job. I found you non-compliant. That's a problem. You know whose fault is it that only one gas station was compliant?
in Mava'u, yeah.
That's the government's fault. See how it is? Like it would be like this. You have a teacher, says they're the best teacher in the world. They know all the stuff. They have 30 students, only one student passes. The person who has the wrong perspective would say, what terrible students. One would have to ask themselves, no, Who is the expert? Who has the knowledge? Who's the responsible party? It's the teacher. You have to look at the teacher and say, hey, what's going on here? Why is only 1 out of your 30 students passing?
Mhm.
Then hey, I'm not saying it's always the teacher, but that's where you have to start. That's where the responsibility starts, especially when you're paying the teacher, right? When each student's paying the teacher, you're taxing the people, you're receiving foreign aid on their behalf, and you're telling me every pausa in Tonga was non-compliant. Well, how long have you known that?
Yeah.
Because if you're telling me you've known for years, then you haven't been able to fix it. When I think the gut feeling is you haven't been doing your job, then out of the blue, you do some random survey, which catches everybody off guard, and they're not compliant.
Yeah.
See, but what's presented is private sector bad guy, government good guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not usually the case, man.
I mahina ta me heni e launch app ko ya ko ilo e toki alwange statistika ko le e kuteita e alwange po te taulanga e fia ke rela mo marini he e tonu e hingoa atu he ka he vaka te eki peke taulava tautol o sia te ashika ke whaka mamafa ai ngahi me a ko ia ko mea pe mau toki mamata mai ai ki he pure anga ko e fine ko e talange ho mau to no hala hataini ke oange ko ha mea ke tau fua fatongia whakataha.
So it sounds like that Defiant app is probably a passenger tracking and cargo tracking tool, right? For these domestic logistics. So it
where
can
they're going to,
where they're going to and what they're doing. So see, that's what she's saying. We're the ones investing in this, and then who's going to be the first one standing in line going like this? Remember that, Masi, when we were little kids? You know, someone has
me was like this, like
you were 2 hands, Masi?
2 hands. Kaya nu toro.
Yeah, right? But you see, why is it that the federal, I keep saying federal, why is the government of Tonga running to the private sector like this? Because that's what they're used to. Foreign aid, big money developers like this. You know, if they were focusing on the Tongans, they're not going like this. That hand would be helping. It would be grabbing. It would be putting something forward, not going like this.
This Tongan lady's also brought up that the government is very good at telling them their faults and weaknesses instead of enabling them to try to help them be more efficient. Yeah. And that's typical for government to kind of do that. Always tell other people's faults instead of the inward looking. It's a lot of government is like that.
Well, see, and that's the funny thing is what government, especially, and I noticed this Tonga, the people who work in the government in Tonga have no idea about this, in my opinion, right? And I didn't really know about this until I spent more time in the US. In Tonga, the perspective is that the government produces money and goods.
Yeah.
Because what's one of the biggest employers in all of Tonga?
Is the government.
Is the government. So people think the government is a producer. They don't know that the government is 100% consumer. The government doesn't produce any money.
Yeah.
The only money that the government gets is from taxing the people and foreign aid. But what is the perspective of the average Tongan when I was growing up? Oh, the government makes the money. The government provides these things. So when the government comes out and says private sector bad, that's an easy story to tell. The populace will eat that up. So like when this Lanumata guy looks like
that's
he
our
was...
That's our Fauafonga.
That's from La Paja. Yeah.
Be nice to him.
If I was voting, I wouldn't be voting for him. Right? Actually, it is. Actually, we are. We are. Which is pretty funny.
Can't pick our family, but
hey, So it sounds like he showed up there the day before, right? Look at the bad private sector. They're all incompliant. Look at how bad. Look at how good I am. I found them. Where any type of leader would say, with such a high failure rate, and we are the regulator,
Mm.
who is responsible for that poor performance? That would be like me as a coach. Never have a practice, never do anything, send my team out into the field and they don't win and be like, yeah, my team sucks. They're terrible. Right? A good leader would say, man, what did we do wrong? How did we mess up our preparation to be beat by 100? I'm okay losing by 5-7 points, okay, but lose by 100 points? That's not acceptable. But instead of thinking like that, my representative in Tonga goes up there and pats himself on the back and say, look at me. I found out that they were all incompliant except for one. I said, Siana, is there a pausa in La Paja? Walk to it. Go check it yourself every day and make sure at least La Paja's pausa passes.
Yeah. No, and this is another thing. I'm just thinking like a lot of the Tongan, because the Tongan government gives their scholarships to Australia, New Zealand. Some go to
Mhm.
China. I actually know one person that went to Cuba to do their studies. All these places, I don't know.
Communists?
Yeah, well, they have I guess it's cheap to teach doctors there to get trained and stuff.
Mhm.
And probably doesn't help because you are right, Tua. Growing up in Tonga, you have that mindset of the government being the all and end all kind of thing, right? And that let's just say government becomes such a good thing that it should do everything for you because even when you go to New Zealand and Australia, that is the mindset, a majority, right? And then they get educated there, so they just come back and just reaffirm what they believe.
Reinforce
They
that
grow
idea.
reinforce that idea. And, Cuba, some go to China. I don't know about the Japan system. I know some people get scholarship go to Japan, but China government does everything. Cuba the government does everything for you. New Zealand, I mean, there's the private sector, but New Zealand's a very friendly government, should be doing everything. Australia too. So I'm like, I don't know if maybe we need to diversify a little bit. Like I'm just saying, because we're having the academic side of people going to school. It's no question it's there, but it's just what side you're advocating for. And most of the people who are in government are always advocating for government to get bigger and should be doing everything and be involved in all aspects. That's just me thinking out loud. And I know Lanmata did his like masters in commerce, but with a Chinese institution. So I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
so that's what I'm just saying. Like, that's what I'm just thinking. It's like, man, like, what's the point of getting all these education if you're just believing something that hasn't been working for multiple government leaders before? I don't know. I'm just like thinking out loud, man, on that.
Any thoughts, Maka?
No, he mentioned Cuba. I'm over here looking. I'm like, man, do you need a visa? I got distracted. I'm like, to visit Cuba.
Yeah. Apparently,
Yeah.
some people got some it's like a student seat to go study medical study and become a doctor in Cuba and come back
Okay.
to Tonga. Mm.
Yeah, I just seen that for a Tongan citizen, you just need a tourist card or something like that. But I don't know. I don't even know what that is. But
Yeah, well, see,
anyway, my bad.
And then that's one of the things that I think, is a big challenge for that is, and I didn't think about that, Masi, that a lot of our government and our leaders in government and even in the quote unquote private enterprise, they're going to places that reinforce big government.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
And
what they believe as a kid that the government should be involved in everything.
And this comes back to our overall theme. What is the role of government?
Yeah.
Right? What is its role? What is the role of your kalapu? Do you want your kalapu to tell you how to spend your day and your money and blah, blah, blah? No, you say your kalapu is just to give me a good time when I go drink some kava, right? Maybe I just want a clean place. I want some rules. I don't want anybody coming kona, kobe with kava malo. Like little things like that. Same thing with government. I just want you to build me some roads.
Just kini power tafaki. That's all. Maintain the road.
Don't come and try to tell me how to pray and all that stuff. Like you said, I'll be kini to give out and you say thank you, Malo, fokiaki. But I think what was funny, this is what I was going to say. You remember that 88.6 guy who summarized earlier? When they had the, wasn't like a government shutdown, but the vote of no confidence.
Yeah.
To kind of prove how bad it is, right? Masi, like what you're saying. When they had the vote of no confidence, Maka, they were having like a live show or something. This is literally one of the questions that came through. What am I going to do? The government is having a vote of no confidence. So the government, in a sense, was like frozen, and they voted they were going to vote the PM out. And literally the people in Tonga were saying, how does this going to affect me? Shanna, the PM don't come in huo yung owe for you. He don't come drive your bus for you. He doesn't, but that's the kind of mentality, I guess, is, oh Yahweh, the Tongan government is not going to be open tomorrow. What's going to happen to me? It's like, no, nothing's going to happen to you. Yeah? Oh, the Lord said he's not going to be in charge. He's not going to run the world tomorrow. What's going to happen to me? It's like, it's the government, man. They could go out of business and you'd be good at least for a year. You might even make a little progress before things get worse. So let's come back and finish off our sister's commentary here.
Koe politiki mau kore atu. O ku whiri ki mau tolu he kakai. Pea koe si isi i peho mau ai hala mau tolu mo ha. Liriu mau tolu ia. Koe ha solo vaanga. Koe uhinga iop tau i heni ai. Koe kore tokoni. Ka taki pe fine. Kau te hoka pehe lurutai. Ke ki Samari no pe. Ke foi konga po ini that I need the donors to hear me. Just a short one. With all of that, that was basically asking our people to come together. For 80 years, our family has been trying to do this business. And it doesn't seem to reach where it needs to reach. Donor funds are being used to buy and bring stuff to our country that we are already doing with commercial banks at high interest rates. Please, if there is a private sector company doing what is already being done, support them. Do not bring in boats that we already have. And we hear the comments yesterday. Oh, in the outer islands, there's no boats. My boats can go everywhere. We have got service boats to link the main ship to the smaller ships because we care. We are from the islands. Our boats are shaped as they are for ease of transfer. We would love a high, beautiful boat, which is thank you, Japan, for the gift of the boat. But I wish it was for me. I wish it was for the private sector. We continue to maintain, even though there is high cost, there is high fees. And thank you for the beautiful domestic party house, because that's what's happening. It is an event center used by government while we are in the rain, the sun, and the dust with the people from the islands.
Is she talking about the domestic wharf in Colo? The Queen Charlotte wharf or something? Or,
is that what she's talking about? I don't know.
I think so. Because I know the government has held events there. I know the Kroistutukuria Honda had their reunion there. And that's why I was like, oh, she's probably referred to that one.
Probably
that's supposed to be a wharf. Yeah, it's probably the wharf supposed to be used for
waste of money.
Yeah. And they're treating it like it's like an event center.
Yeah. Like,
you know, and I guarantee you, maybe the people who put that together, they're like, man, or something. Who knows? Rather than thinking, you know what? Why don't we go ask the CEO of Tofa Ramsey Company if this makes sense? Right? What's a better way to use the money that was going to be spent on that? Oh, you know what you should do before you go put an aluminum piece of metal that'll cut the ropes of the ships? Why don't you go talk to the CEO of Tofa Ramsey Company and say, that's basically what she's saying is, hey, donors, I appreciate you guys willing to help, but you're actually making things worse because you're not talking to the right people and you're not investing in the right areas.
I know that. You know that. Why is it still happening? I have seen most of you here, there, And we are outside there trying to work quietly in our forklifts, trying to not use microphones, even though I know my voice carries. All I'm asking is, please, for the shipping industry, we are the only remaining, and I'm sure in other private sectors, this is happening. We heard about machinery just being run down.
Look at that face.
Hmm.
That guy's face is saying, I learned something today, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Okay? Looks kind of serious, kind of like, man, we need to ask a few more questions before we just write a check or, provide
Yeah.
a piece of machinery.
It's
They
like,
look like
where's all
the
the money
Japanese.
going?
Yeah. They look
Yeah.
like the Japanese that have been donating a lot to Tonga.
Because it's not going to the machinery. My fellow panel
I hope he was looking at Lanmata. Lanmata, why the hell are we failing all the gas stations for? Huh?
Man,
Why are you all
see.
Mahi Lapaha Nights?
is here, Tapuloka Construction, only them and private sector companies now run by young people ever consult us
See?
in projects to the outer islands. And we give them the true cost to reflect the interest rates that we pay that our competitors do not pay because they are community owned. Their risk is shared. Why not support us that are here, that has been showing the resilience time and time again? And here we are still asking. There is a lot more to be said, and we have set up more, including all our family now working there so that I could have more time for meetings. I have knocked on most doors to be told to wait. Some ministers, I'm still waiting 3 weeks to have a meeting. Please consult us. We were never consulted on the building of the wharf at the domestic wharf, but God's grace and mercy, and time and time again, he has brought us through. Only our vessels was able to come into that wharf that we were not consulted on. The boats it was made for, it didn't fit. They had to do extra.
Government's not good at it. The boats that they made it for can't even fit at the domestic wharf.
Hmm. That's a shame.
Man.
Work. God has proven time and time again, and we continue to work, but please, we are questioning the why. Why do we do things we should be doing together alone? Please help us, Malo.
Look at that. Everybody loved that. Look at that face right there.
Those are, I think, those are the Australian and New Zealand. I think.
Yeah, like the donors there.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Malo for the government for putting together the summit. They did something right.
Yeah,
right?
that's good. Yep.
Even though I would probably say they thought the summit was for them to pat themselves on the back in front of the donors to say, look at all the good things we're doing. Give us more money. Right. But then the reality smacked them in the face, in my opinion. But
the whistleblower right here. Let everybody know.
Oh, yeah. Well, with that being said, Masi, any closing thoughts? Then Maka, and then we will call it a night.
No, enjoyed the conversations, Tua and Maka. It's always a pleasure of mine to join you both and just sharing our thoughts. And hopefully, it was helpful and to the viewers, and hopefully the viewers were able to share their thoughts with some of their thoughts on what we talked about today. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. Malo, Maka, and Tua. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week and stay safe with yourself and your families. Malo, ovat.
Malo.
Yep. Yeah, I just want to thank Tua Masi for having me. I'm just I'm just happy to just tag along and learn some things and share my little 2 cents. But yeah, I learned a little bit about myself. I need to touch up on my government and politics, you know what I mean? But yeah, just glad to be along and be part of this podcast. Being a fan myself, I'm not one of I've been seeing some of your guests on here. I'm like, man, these are some heavy hitters over here. I'm just I'm just an enthusiast and history, Tongan history buff, you know what I mean? So but always grateful for you guys' knowledge and just being open-minded to everything and just having this platform to allow people like me and everyone else who's already been on here and whoever's going to be on here in the future to just come and share a little bit of their thoughts. But yeah, thank you for having me, and appreciate you guys.
100%. Malo Masi, Malo Maka for your time. Really appreciate it. We're big believers that conversations is where it all starts, right? Like if you don't have conversations, war is coming. We don't want war, right? We want to have conversations. This is what our ancestors have been doing for thousands of years. This is how our ancestors, established a culture, established a civilization. And I'm excited to continue that tradition, right? Not only within my own personal family, with my wife and my kids, to have conversations. That's what family home evening is. That's what family councils are, is having conversations. Really appreciate everyone who supported us along the way. Just a couple quick highlights. We hit 1 year this week.
Yeah.
Been 12 months now that our little Whakamuna has been running around. So 1 year where, we celebrate the little things. Some people might laugh at us and be like, oh man, but for us, it's exciting. We broke 700 subscribers on YouTube. We broke 2,000 followers on TikTok. Little things here and there. We've really enjoyed the ride, and, like our ancestors did when they went on the canoes, they went. We don't know if we'll make it, but we have the faith, right? We still went out there just because it wasn't guaranteed they would get to the island that was 1,000 miles away. But they had the faith and they jumped on the ship and they went out there. So with that being said, looks like T-Style says on Maka's handles. Is that like RocStone, or what's your social media online, Maka?
Yeah, so I'm I didn't know I had fans out there, but no, RocStone, that's my little kava name, little kalapu over here. But yeah, Mr. Obo he whapalange mo ki koloi. It's just our little kolo in Tonga, but Instagram, Mr. MISTA_OBOAT, Mr. Obo. And then Facebook, I'm just Maka, Hello Maka. Yeah, so
there we go, T-Style.
Yeah, Malo T-Styles.
Yeah,
Malo for tuning in. Everybody else who tuned in, all your comments, appreciate it.
Yes, I appreciate it. There were a lot of comments online. I didn't get to all of them. I appreciate it. Appreciate the interaction. As always, be bold, ask the hard questions, and till next time, peace.
Peace.
Malo.